within us, right? Within the soul, right? Within the soul, this light, like a seed, right? Planted in our souls, when we incline towards that light, that's the language he uses, when we incline towards it, drawn to it, incline towards it. When we're drawn to it, incline towards it, that very draw, that very energy, that very power that draws us to it, that very power draws us to it. That is the power, that is the energy, right, that is striving towards reaching this experience, which is the luminous divine radiance. He said that's the way in which you actually experience it. Right? It's already there. It's already there. It's not something you have to find. It's already there. It's in our souls. And therefore, when we're drawn or inclined to it, that opens the possibility of the experience of the nature of the good, which is another way, of course, we would put the one. Now, one of the necessary ideas that follow from the presence of the one, follows from the presence of the one, somewhere in here is an eraser. Ah, here we are. Say, oneness, unity, unitary, right? All of these ideas are a step further in a progression, like a declension, therefore like a paradigm, a declension. Therefore, as a consequence of the very nature of the one, unity, that everything in the universe therefore is preserved by unity, which is a shadow of the one. Now the other side of oneness, unity, good, remember these are really hyphenated terms. Oneness is goodness. Oneness is goodness. Therefore, the very overflowing of the good that produces the manyness, right? There is necessarily a outpouring of goodness, because just as the one generates oneness or unity, so the good naturally overflows in goodness. Since these are hyphenated, it comes from it. And another name for goodness, which naturally flows through the universe, is providence. Right? And the idea of providence is, as we mentioned last time, is to see, to see before the intellect. Right? It's prior to the intellect. It's an overflowing goodness. Right? It's an overflowing goodness. And in that overflowing goodness, the universe then can be created, and that's the primary goodness that runs through the universe. And that sense of goodness then can be experienced most directly in this overwhelming light experience, because in it one then recognizes and beholds. Another word for reality is that there is a primary goodness throughout the universe which one encounters directly when the mind is unified. When the mind is unified, right, when the three parts of the soul therefore are striving towards this experience, and in that experience one's philosophy is vindicated into a total unity. There. Thank you. Had a good time doing it. Now, stop and ask questions. I think we need maybe 3 blackboards, so I can just move throughout them. Yes.
I know this is Plato's model.
Yes.
The universe.
Yes. All of this comes out of Plato, Plotinus, Proclus. And I'm glad you mentioned that. I brought a copy of Proclus with me. He is one of the greatest figures in history, and he is very seldom studied in colleges. Very seldom. Proclus. He's the only systematic philosopher. You see, let me see if I can just portray something for you. Here you have Plato, Plotinus, and Proclus. Now, Plato does all of those magnificent dialogues. Plotinus looks back on Plato and is interested in how to use this Platonic system as a spiritual system. And therefore you can say that the whole, he has a very beautiful section where he talks about it has happened often. His soul has traveled and the soul descends back into the body. He's a mystic. He's a philosophical mystic. Right? Therefore, he designed a spiritual system which emerges out of, and it's a blend of, and it includes the philosophy of Plato. Now, here we're talking about 400 BC. Here we're talking about 270 AD. And here we're talking about approximately 470, give or take a few years, AD. So we have approximately, give or take, 900 years in this tradition. Especially between 270 and 470, in this period of time, there are many very interesting philosophers, and we don't have their writings anymore. There were many interesting philosophers between Plato and Plotinus. Poseidonus is one of them. And we don't have any of their writings anymore. They've all been destroyed, one way or the other. But with Proclus, what we have is we have him reviewing all of the major thinkers that he knows, and therefore he brings them together into a beautiful chain, a golden chain, as it were. So therefore, Proclus combines the Platonic tradition into a unity, and he caps it, as it were, by showing how you can understand each of these people in a more complete way by going back to Plato and what he finds in Plato. And he brings, therefore, the whole Hellenic tradition into a magnificent system. One of the chief primary thinkers in Christian metaphysics, the primary architect of all Christian metaphysics, is Dionysius.